Okay, well, hello and welcome everyone. I am Ellis Duncan. I'm the director of the Graduate Tax Program, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to our tax panel. I want to first of all congratulate you on your admission to Georgetown. I think that's a phenomenal achievement, and I'm very excited for you, and you should take great pride in that. Before I begin, I want to start by introducing our distinguished panel of experts here. To my immediate left is Stafford Smiley. He's a professor and the faculty director of the Graduate Tax Program. To his left is Clay Collins. He's an alumnus of the LLM program, graduating in 2013, and a former graduate tax scholar. He did a 2-year clerkship with Judge Kropa, right? Judge Lauber also.
On the tail end.
At the tail end of that. And is now an associate in the D.C. office of PricewaterhouseCoopers. To his left is Taylor Beckel, and she's an alumnus of the LLM program class of 2012. She is an associate in the estate planning practice at Venable, which is a Washington, D.C. law firm. And to her left is Drew Cummings. Drew is an alumnus of the LLM program, class of 2013, and also a former graduate tax scholar. He is currently clerking for Judge Albert Lauber of the U.S. Tax Court. And finally, on my far left is Molly Scott, my colleague, who's the Assistant Director of the Graduate Career and Professional Development Group within the Office of Graduate Programs. Molly works very closely with our tax LLM students, and she actually runs our taxation interview program in the spring, where our students interview with the students at NYU's graduate tax program. So Molly is going to share a little bit about what graduate career and professional development, what that team does, generally talk a little bit about careers in tax law, and also give some information about where our graduates go after the tax LLM program. So your ears are perking up when you hear jobs and all of that, I know. So, but let me start. I'm just going to make a few general remarks about the tax LLM program. And so I get to speak a lot about the tax program at Georgetown. And when I do so, I always speak with a great deal of pride, not really in my capacity as director of the program, but as an alumnus. The year I spent at Georgetown was the most rewarding professional experience of my life, and I know that many of our current students and alumni feel the same way. The program did a whole lot for me, both personally and professionally. And now I guess I'm back at the Law Center full time, and Georgetown pays me now. So my Georgetown education, I like to refer to it as the gift that keeps on giving. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to convince you all why you should come to Georgetown. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the benefits of getting a tax LLM, unless we have some sort of specific questions about that. I think those of you who are here have probably made up your mind that you do want to go for the LLM. The big question is where you want to do your LLM. So I want to talk about Georgetown. Because you were all admitted to Georgetown, you are all likely admitted to a number of other top programs as well. So my goal is to tell you why Georgetown is the best possible program for you. And the best way to do this is to talk about what I think makes Georgetown unique and different from any other program that you might be considering. First, and I think this is what really makes Georgetown stand out, is our faculty. Our faculty is comprised of 8 full-time tax professors. 2 of those professors devote 100% of their time to the tax LLM program, including Professor Smiley, which you will inevitably take for something. Really, you will take him at least once, maybe not more than once, in the tax program, because he teaches everything.
Death taxes and Professor Smiley.
Death taxes and Professor Smiley are what you can be assured of in this program. So in addition to our 8 full-time faculty members, we have over 100 adjunct tax professors. These are practitioners at the top of their fields, working at major law firms, accounting firms, the government, the IRS, Department of Treasury, think tanks, corporations, even judges on the U.S. tax court. The real-world perspective brought to the classroom by our adjunct professors truly enhances the educational experience of our students. And as an added bonus, provide valuable job search contacts during the job search process. And for those of you who actually wish to teach as adjunct professors one day, I think Georgetown is actually, you really should consider coming here. Not only do we have more adjunct tax faculty than any other LLM program, more than half of our adjunct faculty hold LLM degrees from Georgetown. Practically, what this means is when we look to add a new course or fill a course with the best possible professors, the first place we look is to our own alumni. So, if you, like our other adjunct faculty members, want to learn from the best, become the best, and one day teach the best, look no further than Georgetown. Second, I want to talk a little bit about our curriculum. And Professor Smiley will talk in a little bit more detail, I think, about the curriculum because he teaches most of it. But Georgetown's graduate tax curriculum is broader and deeper than any other tax program in the country. Each year we offer more than 70 different courses, ranging from foundational courses such as international tax, corporate tax, and tax procedure, to very specialized courses such as tax litigation workshops and courses on the taxation of real estate transactions, derivative instruments, and energy markets, just to name a few. In fact, I cannot think of one tax topic that is not covered in one of our courses. Perhaps the only complaint I hear about the curriculum from our students is that there are too many interesting courses and not enough time to take everything in a single year. On this note, Georgetown is also unique in that we give our students the opportunity to specialize by earning a certificate in one of 4 specialty areas: international tax, employee benefits, estate planning, and state and local tax, allowing students to focus their studies to match their interests, as well as demonstrate their commitment to a specific area of the law. The learning experience at Georgetown, of course, goes well beyond the classroom, and our location in Washington, D.C. has helped make our externship program successful and popular among our students. Georgetown's externship program gives students the opportunity to work up to 15 hours per week at government agencies, international organizations, and professional service firms for academic credit. To give you an idea of where our students complete externships, I sort of have a partial list here. This year's class is completing externships at major law firms such as Alston & Bird, Morgan Lewis, and Kaplan & Drysdale, Big Four accounting firms such as Deloitte and KPMG, corporations such as General Dynamics and Danaher, the U.S. Tax Court, the IRS, the Department of Justice, and the Joint Committee on Taxation, just to name a few. Completing an externship gives our students hands-on practical experience, enhances their resumes, allows themselves to prove themselves on the job, and in some cases leads to an offer of permanent employment. And having an LLM externship program is something that is uniquely Georgetown. No other LLM program has a similar externship program that gives its students the opportunity to work for some of the most prestigious organizations that I just mentioned. And so finally, I think what also makes Georgetown unique is having the opportunity to study tax law in Washington, D.C. It's an experience that is simply unrivaled. Washington is the place where tax laws are created, executed, and adjudicated. The U.S. Tax Court is literally across the street. Capitol Hill is 6 blocks away. The IRS and the Department of Treasury are in D.C., as is the U.S. Supreme Court, and almost every major law firm and accounting firm has a tax practice in Washington, D.C. So, in fact, with the possible exception of the Supreme Court, our graduates go on to work in these very places. And even if you decide to return to your home state or your home country or elsewhere after the program, I can't think of one person who's regretted spending a year in Washington, D.C. It really is an experience like no other. So on those notes, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Stafford Smiley, who will say a little bit more about the LLM program and talk some more about our curriculum.
Well, let me offer my congratulations to Ellis's. I have the honor of being the first full-time professor in the graduate tax program, and I've been here now for 8 years. Ellis and I are working very hard on tailoring the curriculum. I'll start with my general statement, which is my Chinese menu speech. Our curriculum is extraordinarily broad. We have the luxury of fabulous adjunct professors in addition to our full-time faculty who can teach just about anything you would want, and we can offer a very wide variety of courses. What's particularly important, though, is it allows each of you to tailor a curriculum that suits your own needs. I'm not a fan of one of this and one of that. I think you need to think very hard about the story you want to be telling about where you're going, and how you do that with the choice of courses. That's part of the reason Ellis and I in the program generally have worked very hard at creating the certificates, because these are a way of allowing you to select an area, international tax, employee benefits, wealth transfer, that Taylor will talk to you about, to select an area that is of particular interest to you and build a curriculum which gives you both the basics for successfully practicing in the tax area and the specifics to move in the direction you want. And we've found our students have been very happy with that. And it does reinforce the message that you're not undergraduates anymore. You're burgeoning professionals trying to make a place for yourself. And the more clearly you can articulate where you think your skills are, what you think your goals are, and tailor your curriculum to moving you forward in that direction, we think you will get more out of it, and we think you will have a better shot at ending up where you want to go. So we work very hard with that, and we do think we are unique in our ability to help you, because we just have such a rich variety of courses from which you can tailor just exactly the right curriculum for yourselves. Is that enough, Ellis?
That's enough, unless you want to say anything else.
Oh, no.
Okay. So we'll move on to Clay Collins, who is graduate of the program, class of 2013. We'll talk a little bit about his experience and sort of where he ended up where he is.
Thanks, Ellis. And I would also like to echo the congratulations. I remember being in that seat and being at the open house, and it was a really exciting time because there's all this potential, and so there's a lot of choices to make. Usually there's like 3 choices to make, right? And whether you want to go to NYU, Georgetown, or UF. Right, those are like the when I was going through it, and I'm going to speak maybe too honestly here. I might not be invited back, so but so that's like those are the considerations that I was looking at when I was trying to make the decision, and having just gone through, we just had the first wave of the LLM interviews with the National Office of PwC. We had people representative of each school, and I don't want to disclose too much, but Georgetown graduates represent very well, and with respect to the other schools, and so that's on the backside of it, but when I was going into it, I was considering the job market, right? I was considering what the city was like. I was considering, one of the things I was concerned about was there was this thought of that so other programs have full-time faculty, and Georgetown has some full-time faculty, great full-time faculty, but a lot of adjuncts. So like, what does that mean, if anything, right? And so just trying to weigh this in the calculus and put some. To make some decision, and so anyway, so what I found, what my experience was that so being an adjunct at Georgetown, people don't do it because you make a lot of money. People do it because they care about tax, right? And so you're in D.C. and you're working in tax, and you're kind of close to the source here, and so. I found that people who come back to teach really care, right? And so a lot of times it's at night after they've worked a full day, and so they do it out of the genuine I think love might be a little strong for tax law, but a general respect for tax law, and so what I found was that it's that creates an environment that's easy to build relationships in, especially if you care about it, and I care about tax. I like tax. I like what I do, and so that was really. I'm glad that I chose Georgetown for that reason, and I can't speak to what my experience would have been if I had chosen another school. It might have been just as good, but my experience here was great, and so I chose Georgetown, and I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to clerk at the tax court, and it's the kind of proximity of Georgetown to the tax court. One of the tax court judges doesn't hire anybody from Georgetown because he feels that there's an unfair advantage to being so close. That and so that kind of speaks to how powerful the location actually is. And then so I had this really great opportunity, and if anybody here is considering it, I would, send in an application because it's really just a wonderful place to work. If you want to do controversy, if you want to do planning, I think Professor Smiley will tell you that that's a relatively new bifurcation in tax law, but so in either case, it's a good opportunity. And then so once I finished there, I had another great opportunity to work at PwC in the Washington D.C. office in the international group, and I won't take up all the time here. I'll make this brief. But so when I came in, I had graduated in 2010 from law school. I had worked at a law firm in Pittsburgh for a couple of years, and I did a lot of like wealth transfer stuff. We did some really interesting work with captive insurance companies and some other kind of small international tax issues. But I wanted to do real tax. So I came in with this really it was all of our tax work came out of the estate planning group, and so that was I started with this estate planning certificate, and then halfway through I took more international courses, and so I had done kind of almost a practice interview like while I was in school, and one of the comments that I got back was like what do you want to be? What kind of tax do you want to practice? You're taking this and you're taking that, and I had signed up for a transfer pricing course, and so the firm that I was interviewing with, they didn't do any transfer pricing work, so it's like, well, like do you want to do this? Do you want to work for this firm? And so just kind of to echo that sentiment, it does make sense to think about what you want to do, and you might not know, and I didn't know, I just didn't know when I came in, but it is a good thought. So, anyways, that's it.
Right. So Taylor, yeah, she was in did the estate planning certificate, graduated in 2012, and she'll tell you a little bit about her experience as a student and what she's doing now.
Thank you. So congratulations again to all of you, and I'm really excited to be on this panel because I love Georgetown. So I decided to go to Georgetown. I first decided I wanted to get an LLM because I knew I wanted to be a tax lawyer, and coming out of law school, the job market wasn't, fantastic. So I thought getting an LLM will help me be more marketable, kind of concentrate in one area of law. And so I went to law school in Colorado, and I did pretty good, but not fantastic. And Colorado is more of a regional school. And so I was like, I need to get a degree from a more national school and somewhere that's really, really well respected. And so I applied to the same 3 schools that Clay mentioned because those are, the best 3. I'm originally from Florida, so I kind of didn't want to go to Florida because I felt like I'd be stuck in Florida. So Georgetown was my top choice. I had also done an internship in college in D.C., so I knew I really liked D.C. And just Georgetown, just the name is just, I feel like it's so prestigious. And I still remember when I got the email of my acceptance, I was in class in law school, and I was just so excited I had to leave the classroom because I was just like, oh my God, it was like my dream. As Ella said, I did the estate planning certificate. I think that getting a certificate is a really, really good idea. Because just like you're taking this program to focus in an area of law, tax law is still a really broad area. So if you take a certificate, you're even focusing in on something more specific, and that really translates well to employers. When I was interviewing for different law firms, and I was interviewing I applied to some like non-estate planning jobs too, but the estate planning jobs, they were all like really, really excited that I was in that program and that I had like a demonstrated interest in the area. And our estate planning certificate is just absolutely fantastic. If any of you are interested in it, I'd love to talk to you about it. Stafford is one of the professors for in the fall, one of the 3 modules. So that was really, really helpful for me, and I really encourage you to do that. If one of the certificate programs you even think that it may be something that you're interested in. I wasn't sure I wanted to be an estate planner, but I just thought this will be really good for job prospects, and it turned out to be absolutely fantastic. So I'm really, really glad that I did that. And also, when you're in one of the certificate programs, it gives you more ability to interact with some of the professors one-on-one because you're kind of in this group and you're taking a lot of similar classes with the same people and like the same professors. And so I got to know some of the professors a lot better. And the faculty here is absolutely fantastic, like Ella said. My husband actually is also a tax attorney, and he did his LLM at NYU at the same time that I did my LLM here. And so we would compare notes, and he was always saying how like the faculty just wasn't as friendly, and they just didn't seem like they didn't care about the students as much and whatnot. So I mean, I don't know if that's his take, but I always seemed to be much happier than he was at our respective programs. I also did the externship program in the spring. I externed at the Internal Revenue Service, and that was a really fantastic opportunity to be working in the national office of the IRS. I was down the hall from the commissioner, and I made a lot of great contacts at the IRS and people I still talk to. So, if I ever wanted to work there or whatever, I know people there, and it was just a great opportunity. And I know a lot of my other friends who are taking, who are in the LLM program also got a lot of great externships that helped them get jobs too. So I got my job through, so one of the professors for the estate planning certificate, his name is Chris Siga. He teaches the estate and gift tax segment of the certificate. I got my job through him. He's now my boss. So I was really, really lucky to get that opportunity. So I am lucky enough to kind of still have a lot of ties to Georgetown, and because he's always talking about, he like absolutely loves being a teacher. It's just like his favorite thing. He loves the students. We have students come into our office all the time, and he counsels them on career prospects and what to do, and he will do anything for his students, like literally anything. And I think he's not special in that regard. Like, all the professors are absolutely fantastic. What I do at Venable is I'm now a third-year associate. So I do, what we do is tax planning and estate planning for high net worth individuals. And the LLM really, really helped me in my job. I when I first started there, I was like not confident at all, just because it was like my first real job, because I went straight through law school to LLM, and I just I was just new lawyer, and just not feeling confident. And like maybe 1 or 2 months into working there, one of the partners said, like, you're operating at like the level of a third-year associate. And I was just like, wow, like that is such a big compliment. And it was definitely because of the LLM. And I had like all of this knowledge from especially the estate planning certificate. And I could kind of just jump right in on projects that they wouldn't normally assign to someone who just started. So it's been really, really helpful. I have the other 2 associates in my group don't have an LLM, and I have a much better understanding of just tax generally, like issue spotting from all my different like tax procedure class I took, and all these different things that aren't specifically estate planning, but they're things that we run into and things that we see. And so it's been really, really helpful just practically in my job. And another good thing about Georgetown specifically is, like Ellis said, the adjuncts here are practicing like at the top of their game, and I felt like I was part of this like tax community. So when I stayed here, so that was good because I already knew all these people here. But even if wherever you go, like these people will still be here, and they'll be willing to help you, and they have contacts all over the country. So they're just really fantastic people to learn from. So I think that's it. You should come here.
Thanks so much, Taylor. And now I'll turn it over to Drew Cummings, who is a graduate class of 2013, and he is currently clerking on the U.S. Tax Court for Judge Albert Lauber. Drew.
All right, thank you, Ellis. Welcome. Just so you know, the weather in D.C. in March is generally not like this. It's usually much better. So don't fret about the snow and the sleet and the ice. This is abnormal. So as Ellis said, I am now clerking at the U.S. Tax Court for Judge Lauber. I've actually only been in D.C. for about 3 years. So I did the LLM here at Georgetown, then I've been clerking for about 2 years now. Before that, I was a native of the state of Kansas, went to undergrad and law school there. And I knew I wanted to do tax starting about in law school. And I got a certificate at KU and thought that I could get a nice job at a regional firm in Kansas, and then I could just do tax for the rest of my life and only focus on that. And I got that job in Kansas, and the problem is when you get a job at a regional firm in Kansas, you can't do tax 100%. You have to do business, you have to do estates and probate. Most regional firms, their tax offices are limited, and you can't just focus on that. And I knew that's what I wanted to do, so I thought, what's the best way I can do that? I went to a regional feeder school. I mean, KU, you can go to a lot of Midwest firms, but if I wanted to work at a big firm in New York, I want to work at a big firm in D.C., the KU degree wasn't going to cut it. And so I had to make a decision. I thought the easiest step to be able to do that was to get my LLM. And like everybody else, I applied to multiple schools, got accepted to multiple schools. Then I had to make the decision about why I would eventually come to Georgetown. I think there was 4 main reasons that really went along with my thought process why I wanted to come to Georgetown. The first one we've already talked about quite a bit is that's the faculty at Georgetown. And being able to learn from leading practitioners in the field, be it from the IRS, national accounting firms, or private practice at law firms. I don't think of that mix, you're not going to find a better school than Georgetown, who's able to bring in those type of leading practitioners that you could interact with day in and day out. So that was a big factor for me. The second main factor was the curriculum at Georgetown, and Ellis and Stafford have already talked about this a little bit, but it wasn't just the variety of classes that you could take. I mean, there's multiple classes dealing with corporations, multiple classes dealing with partnerships, multiple classes dealing with estate and gift taxes, multiple classes dealing with international tax. But it's also the variety of classes that you're able to take. Lectures, paper classes, seminar classes, so you're actually able to use the skills that you're learning in the lecture classes and apply those. And I'm a big proponent of taking seminar classes and actually getting real-world hypotheticals. And Georgetown has a ton of those classes. I took 4 of them because, one, it's nice not having as many finals at the end of semester. So that's a nice little tip, is working a seminar class or a paper class to lighten that load. But I thought that was a huge advantage of coming to Georgetown, was getting actually to apply what you learn to real-world facts, even if you had fake clients. The fourth one is just the unique opportunities for externships in DC. And as we've talked a little bit about, there are entities in DC that you're not going to find in other places. I mean, you can have externships at the IRS, at Treasury, at the Joint Committee on Taxation, at national prestigious law firms, and at other cities in the country you're not going to be able to actually do that. I was lucky enough to get an externship at the U.S. Tax Court, which is also a court that's only located in Washington, D.C. And I was then able to roll that over into a clerkship, which at the tax court, and I'm sure at a lot of places, is not going to be news to anybody, but being able to roll over an externship, doing well there, and turning that into a full-time job. It's pretty obvious to me that had I not gone to Georgetown, I would not have externed or interned at the U.S. Tax Court, and I wouldn't have the job I have now. As Clay was saying, it is a little almost unfair having Georgetown just across the street from the tax court. But if you're doing a clerk there, I'd say probably half of the clerks there have the LLM from Georgetown. So Georgetown is definitely a good feeder if you're looking to go to the U.S. Tax Court. And finally, the last reason I think that coming to Georgetown was beneficial was just that it's in D.C. and the number of free events that you can attend in D.C. that involve taxes and allow you to network and actually talk to and speak to young associates, practitioners, and people in the government about tax work. There are multiple national conferences in D.C. that allow you to go out and meet these sort of people. Multiple of these entities also have smaller luncheons monthly, so you can go and do that. Just last week, we shouldn't tell my boss because he was out of the office last week, but I went to the Senate Finance Committee, and they had 2 hearings on tax reform, and I was able to sit on that for 2 hours. I mean, those are just opportunities that you can only get if you're in Washington, D.C.
On Wednesday, I went to a DC bar luncheon on a certain tax topic, and I ran into Drew's fiance there and other people who had been interviewing at the taxation interview program, just to underscore that.
Yeah, so I guess that leads to a good segue that there are also multiple networking events that happen throughout the year, hosted by the ABA, the FBA, the DC bar. This is just a good way to interact. So basically what I'm trying to say is the DC bar, it's a small tax bar, and it's a tight-knit community, and by coming to Georgetown, you can get into that community more quickly and meet the people who you can find out where the jobs are, what the hot topics in tax are. So there's just a lot of opportunities if you come to Georgetown to actually get involved in the tax community and fairly quickly. So those are the 4 main reasons that I thought about why Georgetown would be beneficial and why coming to DC would be beneficial. And as you can tell, I did come to Georgetown, and I loved my experience. And I would say, think about those 4 factors, and I hope that all of you come to Georgetown next year.
Thank you, Drew. And then last but not least, certainly, is Molly Scott, who is the Assistant Director of Graduate Career and Professional Development. She works, I think, primarily with tax students, runs our taxation interview program, and will give you some more information about, what we do at Georgetown to assist you with your career planning, job fairs, and the various career paths for tax LLM students.
Thanks, Ellis. It's exciting to see you out there. I know in the fall when we have our big orientation session, there are always faces I recognize from having come to the open house, and so I hope a lot of your faces will be in that group. And I do want to talk a little bit about the services that we offer and kind of the career paths that we see for tax LLM students. So as Dean Hunter mentioned in the welcome session, if you were there are 3 dedicated LLM career counselors at Georgetown. And we're actually over in the Office of Graduate Programs. So we're with the academic advisors and the advisors for your adjunct faculty, which I think is actually a great system and a great benefit for you because we get a better sense of you holistically. We really work as a team to help you in your job process. Ellis is a part of that team all of the time, and I think that level of communication back and forth within graduate programs is a great benefit. The way we do counseling is that we take one-on-one appointments. We each have our own calendars where we allow you to schedule those online. And we also every day have drop-in sessions from noon to 1 where people can come in with quick questions. So that's also available. We have a newsletter that we send out each week called Graduate Connections. And in that we try to highlight bar events, different activities in DC, whatever we're going to be doing on campus. We also host events. We put job search tips in there, and we also have a good opportunities section where we gather up information from many sources, including from employers who've come just to us requesting the materials of our students, and we publicize those to you guys. So that's something when you are here to pay attention to. As for programming, we definitely have a full calendar throughout the year. I think the primary areas are really skills building, resumes, cover letters, interviewing skills, and then the networking side of things, bringing in practitioners to talk to you about what they do. In the fall, this took the form of a Friday practitioner series, where every Friday of the fall semester, we had a different practice area represented through primarily alumni coming to talk to a small group. So we had people who'd done estate planning, people who'd done international tax, people who did M&A, sort of within tax, the specialty areas that our program covers, we had at that series. And it was a good way for students to come find out more about what those areas consist of in actual practice, and also to meet people working in the areas and really start the networking process, which is so essential to your job search. So that's an example of how we are always bringing practitioners here to meet you and to give you the opportunity to learn more from them and make those connections. We also offer a really great correspondence review service. So we have like a separate email address where you can send resumes, cover letters, even emails, and we mark them up and PDF them back to you. And some people will send us every single cover letter they write in the year, which at some point is probably not necessary, but we're still happy to do it. And I think a lot of people really improve their application materials by using that service. We always do resume collections in response to employer demands. So in addition to what you would see in Simplicity, if you know that system, we will have employers who say, don't post it in Simplicity, just announce it to the LLM population. And those are things we announce through Graduate Connections. But we always try to solicit and accommodate employers in their recruiting of students in any way that we can. As for externships, everyone's been mentioning those. This past year, we got involved in marketing externships to employers, and we had a lot of new tax externships available. And we also really counsel you as you're pursuing applying to and securing externships. So this spring, there were a couple of students at the end of the process who were still wanting externships and hadn't found them, and a couple of employers who still wanted students. And we were really the go-between in putting those groups together and getting the students into the externships. And I can say after the taxation interview program that our externships are a huge advantage, like above your JD almost, where you extern and having that on your resume just absolutely helps you so much in the process of securing a job. So whether it's at that place or another place, the breadth of our externship opportunities and just the opportunity to do that as an LLM student is a huge advantage to this program. I looked back at the statistics, and we had 13 tax students externing in the fall and 39 in the spring. And as Ellis had mentioned, it was really at a range of places: government agencies, the tax court, a lot of law firms, and Deloitte and KPMG. We also this past year had some opportunities that we offered, like professional development, to enhance the externships. So another way to learn more about how to be successful in your externship experience. I think it's important to just think ahead, too, about the timing of your job search. The LLM program is short, and we do that large orientation session because we really want you to start your job search in the fall. And in fact, if you know you're going to start the LLM, then just start it now. Some people come to campus having already had some coffees with some people in DC or where they want to go practice about what they're going to do when they graduate. And the sooner you start that, really the better. We will just throw everything at you for 6 hours at orientation to get you going in that job search. You definitely want to ramp it up quickly in the fall in addition to your studies. And throughout the fall, like I said, we do a lot of networking training. We do usually have an OCI for the IRS honors program. Like, they come on campus in September to interview. And sometimes we have other firms who come on campus. There's not as much distinct hiring in the fall. It's more of, laying groundwork for the hiring that will take place in the spring. We see that employers want to see your grades in your fall semester of the LLM, and they're waiting for those to come out before they're really giving job offers, generally speaking. So fall, lay the groundwork. In spring, you'll see once the grades come out, we have the taxation interview program, which is a huge source of employers coming and seeking LM students. And then we'll also have a lot of employers seeking resume collections. And last year we did an effort that we're going to do again, which was a resume book of still seeking tax students at the end of the year. And then we had that available when employers asked. And a lot of people found positions in May, June, through that system. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. It's definitely important to pay attention and be on top of those in addition to your studies. In terms of the market for tax LLMs, I think, as Taylor mentioned, you get the specialized degree, and that helps you target yourself to employers. And we definitely see that LLMs have an edge for that. Many tax employers really prefer you to have the LLM, and that remains the case. And accounting firms are a large employer of tax LLM students and largely do not employ JD students. So the LLM is a degree that helps you get into that pool of people. In terms of statistics, we gather employment data on a voluntary basis, and we don't report it to U.S. News and World Report. So to some extent, it's more ad hoc, and we also sort of try to find it ourselves for the people who don't fill in our surveys. But we did go back, and for the class we surveyed in May 2014, as of November 2014, when we were putting together a different tax consortium event, we found that of 157 U.S. tax grads from that group of students, we had found information on 128. Either they told us or we could find them in LinkedIn or otherwise. And 119 of the 128 were employed. So that's 93%. I think the November date lets you know that not everyone is employed at graduation. That's just a fact. We wish they were, but usually they're not. But in the few months following graduation, people really find their spots, and there's a lot of employer demand as graduation is coming. So there's TIP, that's before graduation, that's many people, but then there are other opportunities that arise after graduation as well. The employers of the tax LMs are what you would expect, I think, law firms ranging, from big law here in DC or New York, mid-size and smaller firms in those cities or in smaller cities. The groups that usually tax LMs go to would be general tax, trust and estates, employee benefits. Some law firms and definitely accounting firms have state and local tax as a group, and corporate as well. And there are boutiques in all of those areas that employ our graduates too. For the accounting firms, that may be a route you're not as familiar with because they don't do a lot of recruiting at the JD level, but they really love LLM students. They usually come on campus in the fall. They have a huge presence at the taxation interview program, and they have specialized practice areas aligned with our certificates. That's international tax, state and local tax. Some of them have employee benefits, and there's also M&A. In those accounting firms, you're doing tax consulting work, so you're not strictly doing legal work, but it's usually related and mixed with some accounting principles as well. Clay might want to talk to that. But they really offer great training, great opportunities. I mean, for people who know that they want to do very specific areas like outbound or transfer pricing, you usually can't focus on that in a law firms, but in an accounting firm you can. So I think that that opportunity is excellent. And they just are really, really attracted to LLM students. As for the government, we did have 2 people get into the IRS honors program through the fall process that I mentioned this year. There are sometimes, there are always people at the tax court and sometimes people at state and local courts or state and local government as well. And on the corporate side, every now and then we'll have corporations come through the taxation interview program. We had Exxon this past year. We've had Pfizer before as well. And then otherwise, sometimes people find positions in corporate in-house. Sometimes those are people who had some previous tax experience. Every now and then it's someone who's really just starting out but can sell the LLM as a level of experience. So I think that's also another opportunity open to you after the LLM. A couple of words about the taxation interview program. So we've mentioned that a few times in case you haven't heard of it before. That's our essentially on-campus interview program that we run with NYU. We usually do it on the first Friday in March, and there's a whole process ramping up to that starting in January, going into March. And we've seen a steady increase in the employers over the past few years. So in 2012, we had 35 interview rooms. In 2013, we had 50. In 2014, we had 64. And in 2015, we just had 77. So I think that's positive. We're definitely seeing students, I mean, the pace of this year's process afterwards is also very fast. We already have 2 people who've accepted at big law firms, and this program took place 2 weeks ago. So that is not normal and is very promising. And I think there's just definitely employer interest and employer demand for the students. And I know that students are, really happy with how things went overall. It's not, the source of employment for everyone, but I think it's a solid part of the program and a solid part of the picture as you go through the year to consider the opportunities there. And especially if you're aiming for an accounting firm, that's really where they do a lot of their hiring. And they really like Georgetown students. So that's an overview of how we do things and how things turn out for the students. You're welcome to ask questions, I think, of any of us, and of me now or later as well.
Well, thank you, Molly. I appreciate that. I'm just going to close with a few remarks or considerations I think they're important when you're choosing an LLM program. And I think a lot of these have been sort of echoed on this panel, but I sort of want to reiterate them for you. The first thing would be the curriculum. As Professor Smiley said, your transcript should tell some sort of story about you to your future employer. So the question that you should ask of each LLM program, do they have the type of curriculum that's going to enable you to tell the story that you want to tell? At Georgetown, there is no question, whatever story it is that you want to tell, we have courses that will lead you in that direction. So our curriculum is so broad and so deep that you're going to be able to tell whatever story it is you want to tell. Along with that comes the opportunity to do an externship. Not only is that a great way to get hands-on experience and sort of polish your resume to have some experience on it. Like what a great opportunity it is to have a sneak peek in the day-to-day life of an employer, if you're not sure exactly where you want to go, to be able to work in a law firm or the national office of an accounting firm or the IRS or the tax court or on the Hill. These are just to have that opportunity to get that sneak peek really, I think, enhances our program and makes it very, very different from any other program. The second thing I wanted to highlight that I think is an important consideration is obviously the job prospects. I think, Molly talked about, our students are doing very well. I see this, I'm talking to them on a daily basis. The market has greatly improved. Just from personal experience, I'll say that, I did an LLM, I graduated from the program in 2006. It was a bit of a different market back then, but, I walked out of the program with offers at 4 AmLaw 100 firms, the National Office of an Accounting Firm, and the IRS. So this program, I got every single opportunity that you could possibly want out of an LLM program by coming here to Georgetown. The difficulty was deciding which of these jobs I was going to take, and that was, was a great problem to have. But what I'm saying is from personal experience. I was able. This program just gave me every opportunity and completely changed my own career trajectory in a way that would have never happened, had I not done the LLM. And so the third thing I suggest that you think about is geography. And I think, it goes without saying that Georgetown Law, the Georgetown LLM program, has a national reputation. So you can take your Georgetown LLM to California or to Texas or to Florida, and people will recognize it and understand that's a great program. But I think, on a more micro level, think about where it is you want to spend a year. And if you're not sure where, if you happen to know where you might want to spend your career. And if you don't know, I suggest that you do spend a year here in Washington. It's a great place for many of the reasons we highlighted. But even beyond that, having a career, working in Washington, D.C. is just, I think this is a phenomenal city to be a tax lawyer just because of the sheer number of opportunities and directions that your career can go in. I mean, New York has the big law firms and the big accounting firms, but here we have the tax court and the DOJ and the IRS, Capitol Hill. People's careers really sort of evolve in so many interesting directions here in Washington. So if you're considering living and working in Washington, D.C., I would really take this opportunity to check out D.C. and spend your LLM year here at Georgetown. So those are my final remarks, and now I think you have to have questions, and if not, we'll start making up questions and answering them. So go ahead and please, any of us are available for anything that might be on your mind. Yes.
I want to know when the majority of the classes would be scheduled for the Georgetown Tax LLM students. If it be primarily in the evening or during the daytime, and when you did your externships, if you had any challenges balancing the externing in addition to studying full-time at Georgetown Law School.
Well, I'll start with I'll let them answer the question about the externships and the balancing, but I'll start with sort of the curriculum and class scheduling. We have a mix. I think that most of our courses are taught in the evenings. The most popular time block is 5:45 to 7:45. The reason that's the most popular time block is because that's when all of the adjuncts are available after work, and that time block actually works for both our full-time and our part-time student body. We have actually been, since we do have full-time faculty, including 2 in the graduate programs, we do have a number of courses during the day. So I think a lot of students will have sort of a balance, maybe 3 or 4 classes at night and maybe 2 during the day. From what I understand, there aren't a lot of classes on Fridays, so that day is generally free for externships. But I don't know, how did you all balance class with externships?
Well, so I did an externship when Judge Lauber was, he had just gotten confirmed, and so his first full-time clerk wasn't starting yet, and I was starting with Judge Kropa in the summer, so it just worked out that that it would be beneficial. And so, it's so I am probably not the best person to answer how to balance life, because I really enjoy what I do, and so just kind of a general comment. Like if you are wanting to do a tax LLM at Georgetown, and you want to work in doing legitimate tax work for real clients, and to answer really like tough questions, there's a lot of people that want to do that. So it takes a certain commitment, and it takes a certain drive to want to do that. And so like I spent a lot of time studying tax and doing the externship, and but that's what I wanted to do. That's what I like. And so like it made me happy to do that, right? So like it for me, it wasn't the case where the externship took away from what I could learn during class time, right? It wasn't something where it's like I had demands at the externship that I couldn't somehow do a homework assignment or read a particular reg for class. It was more that I wanted to be there, and I wanted to keep doing that. And so like the pressures that it created for me are a little bit different from kind of the question I think that you posed. But anyway, so that's the best way that I can respond to it.
The majority of all my classes were in the evening. I think sometimes I would finish at like 10 o'clock or something. So I think, at least I found externing at the IRS, that they were really, really flexible, and I got the externship and I told them these are the days I have classes. I had a few daytime classes, but not that many. And then I just worked like 2 or 3 days a week at the IRS during the day, because it's not a full-time thing. Like I think I did 15 to 20 hours a week or something like that, and they were really flexible. So I don't know if other law firms or corporations or et cetera would be as flexible, but I just basically got the externship, and they said, when can you work? You need to work 15, 20 hours. So it was a non-issue for mine.
Yeah, so I externed with Clay, so I have a similar experience with him. But I would say generally you work 10 to 15 hours a week when you do an externship, which most people can fit in to 2 days. And so, I mean, most people don't have class 5 days a week in the daytime. So, I mean, it's definitely you can fit it into your schedule. And it is a trade-off. But you have to think about, well, I'm getting 2 hours of credit for this, so I don't have to read for one class. That's some time that's not really being eaten up by the externship. And then it's the trade-off of what are the benefits of the externship. I mean, I could be reading for another class, or maybe I can take this externship, I can roll that into a job, or at least I can get a good reference to get a job after the externship. So it definitely is a trade-off of you're going to lose a little bit of time, but I think the benefits vastly outweigh the time commitment, especially 10 to 15 hours. I mean, 2 days a week. I mean, I think it's doable. I think we all did it, and I think we all thought that it was a worthwhile experience.
Yeah, I was going to say most employers are pretty flexible about when you come in, as long as it's during sort of the business hours. So you can look at your class schedule and talk with your employer and say, I would like to work on Tuesdays and Fridays because I don't have class those days, or I don't have it during the day. And employers, Molly, they're really flexible about this, I would think.
Yeah, they know your students, so they're going to work with you on your schedule. And also, you have to extern for 11 weeks, and that's not the length of the semester. So to some extent, people try to finish it up, before they go into exam study mode, and so that they're free for that. Or I've seen people backload it if they were studying for the bar, doing something else at the start of spring semester, and then finish during exams. So I think employers are used to accommodating students' needs, and they understand that you have the constraints of class as well.
No, I mean, externships are not paid. You get two academic credits for doing an externship. We do have a number of paid internship positions that become available usually each semester. So I feel like sometimes it can be a little much, because if you're being paid, sometimes they're expecting a little bit more out of you, more hours. So doing a paid internship on top of 12 or 13 credits is kind of excessive, but it's available. So
yeah, I'll jump in. I will say my fiance had a paid internship, and she made it work. So she did work a lot, but she also thought it was very rewarding. So I mean, that's an option that's out there as well.
I think also you can, if you want to extern, you can extern in the fall, and then sometimes that would lead to that becoming an internship in the spring if you want to keep on with that employer, but you've already used up, you can only do one externship. So you kind of used up the credit side of it, but you might be able to turn it into an internship.
Okay, Molly, that requires me to jump in. I'm somewhat on a different wavelength from a lot of the people about externships. I think they're extremely valuable for many of you, but I'm very strongly against doing them in the fall. I think most of you will find that in the fall you need to devote your time to your studies. You want to do really well, as well as you can with your first set of grades. And my experience is most students, that's a handful, and they're very profitably engaged doing that. I think the externships for most students make sense in the spring when you're through that first press and you're beginning to look more towards your ultimate job and to branch out from just the full court press to do well in your classes for your first semester.
I think you have to assess your own ability to balance those things and your own past work experience. But of course, you also should do well in the fall, and doing well in the fall positions you well, separately from the externship. So I think we have a healthy disagreement about that.
We do. And my general rule that I like to follow is just don't make yourself crazy. 13 credits plus 30 hours a week at a job is crazy. Don't do that. I think that for some it does make more sense in the spring to do an externship, and a lot of people just need a little extra time to think about what it is they want to do. But on the flip side, I think fall externships can be really good. I mean, especially if it's a place that you know that you want to work, you get an externship opportunity in the fall, you might be able to, lock something up early. That would be a real benefit. Or, if that's something that you really, really want. And also, there tends to be a little less competition in the fall, so you might get a better, what you perceive to be a better, I think they're all good externships, but what you perceive to be a better externship for you if you apply in the fall. So there's that. But don't make yourself crazy. Don't do 13 credits and 30 hours a week paid, no matter what anyone tells you. So, yes. Yeah, so grades, I guess, are important, right? Because you're in law school, and you know that. And so we have to talk about that, I think, a little bit. They are curved. I think you teach big classes, so basically, if you curve it incorrectly, the registrar's office sends it back to you and tells you to redo it.
No, it's not quite that harsh. There is a so-called Georgetown curve. If you are teaching a class, this doesn't really apply in small seminars, but if you're teaching a class of any size, if you're wildly off of the curve, you'll get a call from the registrar. You will have the opportunity to explain why you are off the curve. So it is a guide, and most people generally follow it. I've never found it to be difficult to follow it. I mean, curves reflect something about student bodies that you can sort of see how the students fall out, and in bigger classes it just is sort of a natural process.
Yeah, I think so. Just to give you an idea of what grades look like here, I would say kind of on average, the average class is maybe going to center around a B+, like a 3.33, whereas a 50 puts you in the top third of the class, and so you graduate with honors with distinction if you get that GPA. So, are there any other grade questions? Yes. Well, Stafford and I have thought about this a lot.
Yeah, if you go on the website, Ellis and I have crafted for LLM students a variety of sample curricula, both curricula that key into one or another of the certificates and curricula that don't. And so between us, we have about 5 or 6 classes that we consider the basics that if you haven't gotten them before you come here, and unless you really know what you want to do, you should try to get. They include the required courses, which are Federal Income Tax Accounting and Corporate Income Tax 1, although many of you will be able to waive out of Corporate Income Tax 1 because you'll have had it in your JD program. Partnership tax has become one of the staples. Taxation of property tax used to be a required class. Now it should be required, except that many of you, if you had a strong personal income tax class in your JD program, would find you didn't need to take that again. We have a federal tax practice and procedure class, which I think both Ellis and I would put in the kind of the basics. And what I think there's one other. But anyway, we've tried to lay out in the curriculum guide some curricula that many of you will find helpful. Not that you should follow them slavishly, but rather that it's a place to start to thinking about what makes sense for you and what doesn't make sense for you.
Yeah, I think that you've hit all the required courses. I would say income tax accounting, corporate tax, partnership tax, international tax, and probably tax procedure should be on the menu before you leave. And if you are unsure of what you want to do, we suggest you just go ahead and take all of those courses in the first semester, and then your second semester you can spend, branching out a little bit, taking more seminars, externship, all of that stuff.
And so I just want to add a note. So I waived out of corporate. One, because I took it in my JD, and I regret that decision.
I do too. I could have used a refresher. And they go a lot more in depth at the LLM level than your JD class.
Yeah.
So just think about that before you submit your waiver.
Especially if you're going to do international work. I mean, it's a lot of corporate stuff, so it's really.
Even in estate planning, you need to know we're setting up LLCs and our clients have partnerships and all different things. Yeah.
Corporate tax, partnership tax, international tax, very, very important stuff. So,
Another way to turn it on its head is that in addition to moving in the direction of certificates, we've also been trying to be sure that in each certificate area we offer a survey course, usually a 2, sometimes a 3-credit course, so that for those of you who don't want to specialize, that you can in a systematic way get the basic points of each of these areas, so that's another way to sort of fashion your curriculum, so that we have a very good class in international tax aimed not at those who want the certificate, but at those who want to have this to do while they're doing something else.
And the same thing for state and local tax, and next year for employee benefits law. We have survey courses in both of those areas as well. So, yes.
Back to taking corporate again, would employers find that funny if you had corporate listed twice on your transcripts, one in undergrad in law school and then one at the LLM? Would they find that strange at all?
No.
I don't think so. Just for the reasons
all employers, but
yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think they would understand that the JD course and the LLM course are going to be different. The LLM course is going to be a lot more in depth.
More questions? Yes.
Is there any difference in being considered a part-time student as opposed to full-time? So I know over 7 credits you're considered a full-time student. And on the JD level, you can't work more than 20 hours a week as a full-time student. Is there any restrictions or anything like that at that level? Or is it really just the amount of credits that you're taking?
Well, yeah, it's really you're distinguished between the amount of credits that you're taking and the maximum number that you can take. So if you're a part-time student, you can take no more than 7 credits in a semester. If you're a full-time student, you can take no more than 13 credits in a semester. I don't know if they're on the LLM side, or I don't think there's prohibitions against working a certain number of hours with the credits, because I know people who do it.
Well, technically, I think under ABA rules, if you are in full-time student status, you're not supposed to work more than 20 hours a week. But on part-time, most people are working full-time,
Yeah.
and there's definitely no restriction on that.
And people do it. People do it. So
Just don't let them find out about it.
don't let them find it. Don't let anybody find out. No, I'm kidding. Well,
And thrive on no sleep.
yeah. Other questions? Yes.
For part-time students, do people wait to seek employment until they're sort of nearing the end of whatever period they're going to get the degree, or do people begin that earlier and maybe, get a job, continue working for the employer while they're
I think it depends. I think that most of our part-time students, when you come in, are working full-time jobs at that point. I mean, they might use the LLM to sort of, position themselves for another type of job. It kind of depends on what pace you're on in the part-time program. I mean, you can finish it up probably in a year and a half. I think that, career resources are available wherever you are in the program. The tip, I think you need to be in your last semester. Is that not the rule anymore? Okay.
Yeah, you can do TIP when you're in student status, whenever you're in student status, and when you're a tax court clerk. So some people will do it more than once. And I have seen a range of when part-time students decide to start that employment search. People kind of doing it as they're finishing 2 years of the program, really focusing in on it. Some people do search and go through TIP earlier and switch jobs while they're in the LLM studies. I think it's more of a personal choice, but that the options open up to you as you start the LLM for sure.
Yep.
Last question. Did a majority of your classmates, when you graduated from GULC, did they tend to stay in the DC area, or was there a certain geographic area that most of your classmates are right now, just on a general basis, or did you find that if you were in DC, you would want to stay there, or thoughts about that?
I guess, can I speak from I'm a class beyond them. So I'll say my class, the class of 2006, I went to New York with a couple of others. Most stayed in D.C. I think all of us, with the exception of maybe a couple, or of my close friends, it was maybe a group of 12 of us, are in D.C. now. All of us.
Yeah. So, most of the people that I hung around with are the people that I follow, and so most of those are in D.C. I guess the next largest chunk would be New York, and then some people had strong ties to where they came from, so they would go back to Detroit or somewhere like that. But I would say mostly D.C. and then to a lesser extent New York.
Yeah, I found that there were kind of like three groups. There was the New York people, the people who stayed here, and then the people who knew, even coming in, that they wanted to go back home, or they even had job opportunities already lined up back home. And all of my best friends are the friends that I made when I was in my LLM program. I still hang out with all the same people. But I don't really have a good sense of the percentages of like the three groups. I know at least 20 people from my year who are still here. So.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well, but add one more smaller group, and that's people who went to
Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas. No, people who nobody goes back to Kansas. But working abroad, a number of my friends have gone to international offices. That's not right for everybody, but I think that's a smaller but fourth group that's also available when you come to Georgetown.
Yes.
Hi, I'm a little bit curious. So what are the accounting firms particularly looking for, and how's that different from the law firms for students?
I guess, I can sort of begin this because I have worked at both the Big Four accounting firm, which is where I started, E&Y, the Transaction Advisory Services Group, M&A Tax in New York, and then I worked at 2 major law firms before coming here full time. I think it's a little bit different. So law firms put a lot of emphasis on your JD school and your grades there. So some law firms only interview people. Some law firms are stricter about this than others. Some are a lot more flexible with where you went to school, before getting your LLM. Some are less flexible about that and have sort of only certain schools that they look at. Grades, your JD school, JD grades, LLM grades are pretty important. The accounting firms really, they don't put tons of emphasis on your JD program. Molly, is that a fair statement to make? I think they're more concerned. They really like you if you have an accounting or finance degree, some sort of background there. But sort of, I guess they put less emphasis on the JD credentials, more on sort of like how you did in the program and what courses you're taking and whether those courses match up with what their practice is.
Yeah, I would say they're definitely more focused on your LLM school, your LLM grades, and then, like Ella said, if you're in the SALT certificate, you're going to get a lot of interviews with the state and local tax groups of the Big Four, like sort of the certificates lining up with the specialized practice areas that they have, whereas the law firms are focused more traditionally and typically on your JD record and less on the specialty areas, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, many of you may not have thought about working for an accounting firm coming in, if some of you are just from a JD program, but those can be really great job opportunities. I mean, some of the most, if not the most sophisticated work in Washington, D.C. is done in the accounting firms, I think. And
I think so too.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. When I think about where some of the really high up people are, a lot of them are in the accounting firms here in Washington, D.C. Salary, everybody's curious about that. I'm just going to throw out kind of what I see, but the accounting firms will, law firms in DC, New York will start you at 160, but the accounting firms are kind of a little bit behind that, but not much. Like a lot of them will pay you 6 figures just coming out of an LLM program. So it's, that's a pretty good job to be doing, really interesting tax work and getting paid 6 figures with just coming out of the LLM program. Not all markets, but
Yeah, so and I'll say something just about my limited experience with what an accounting firm looks for, and so I think it's generally true what Molly said and what Ella said, but the people who I work with, there are, let's just say 30 people, and maybe 3 of them are CPAs, and the rest are either JD, CPA, or just JDs. So in a large sense, it's like a law firm. We don't practice law. We suggest changes to language. We don't make changes to language. That's one of the nuances. But yeah. So so it's largely kind of the what people's experience. And I just went through this kind of round table where everybody talked about their impressions of the candidates who just interviewed, and so. It's what the ITS group at PwC National Office is concerned with is what relevant experience you have, what it's not as much about, like, if you have a great pedigree, I mean, that helps, but like a demonstrated commitment to whatever specialization you're going into, that helps, and so and I think to that end, the LLM really fits into that well, because it is this demonstrated. I mean, it's a year of your life, it's a financial commitment, it's not an easy thing to do, So I think that's probably why accounting firms are drawn to that, because it's this very tangible. Evidence that this person's committed. This is what they want to do. So, for whatever that's worth.
So yeah.
Another question.
Sure.
When applying the clerkships for the tax court, is it like the deadline for other federal courts, should you begin our applications in the summer on Oscar, or?
Yeah, so it's separate from Oscar, and the secret is most of the postings are never made available online. But it is a similar timeline where you generally want to apply in the late summer, early fall. Interviews usually happen early to late fall, and then the job would be for the upcoming summer. So it is, you usually don't apply for a clerkship and then start, in a month. It's a long wind up. But yeah, nothing's on Oscar, and almost nothing is online at all. So just sending in resumes to judges around summer, early fall is generally the best practice, because that's when the openings and interviews will be taking place.
And usually we send more information about that process out to you guys in August. And we recommend in that and otherwise, like calling chambers, find out if there's an opening, because it's not consistent the way people would publicize the opening, but usually you can find out through the phone calls. But we do also tell people, besides the fall process, there are openings that arise at other times, and a lot of times the judges will contact us to publicize those openings. So you should do it in the fall, and then if it doesn't work, you should keep trying it. And I saw a student who was on full-time status be really persistent this year, get a clerkship, start the clerkship, and switch to part-time status. That was in the middle of the year. So it's not like as firm, I think, on the cycle as you might see in a district court clerkship.
Yeah, I think there are actually 2 students that did that this year who switched to part-time and are not working full-time at the court. And a good way to do that is to find an externship at the court, so then when clerkships become available, if that's sort of the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, I was gonna echo exactly what Drew said, because you got your job through your externship with Judge Lauber, and his co-clerk did the same. So, if you think you want to be in the tax court, you may want to actually consider the fall externship on the tax court, because you're kind of early in the process. When something becomes available, you're going to hear about that, right? Is that right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm laughing.
Oh, he doesn't. Oh, he was laughing about the fall externship being a bad idea. But if you want to work on the court, I think that in addition to the application process, you really should consider, possibly doing an externship in the fall. It's earlier. That's what you want to do. So.
Yeah, I'll echo that, because nothing is available online. It's the people who know about it who generally are able to apply for those openings when they become available.
And if you have a letter of recommendation from another judge, that carries a lot of weight. So. Yeah.
How do the accounting firms compare to law firms as far as number of hours worked per week, billable hours? About the same or less?
You want to talk about your experience?
I'm the accounting firm, law firm associate, because since I did both. So, as I explained, I worked for the M&A group tax in New York City for 3 years before coming to the LLM program, and then I went back and worked for, the Wall Street law firm. And so at E&Y, the work was very similar, I felt. The law firm and accounting firm with some differences in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. But the hours, like at E&Y, I think the target utilization goal was about 1,800. I don't know if it's more or less at PwC or what. That's like a normal target. But I found that to be like a 9 to 7 job, most days of the week, with like the occasional Saturday thrown in and a few late nights a month. At a law firm, it's pretty. If you're working for like a big, AmLaw 100 law firm, you're looking at about 2,000 hours per year billable. It's actually significantly different from the 1,800, believe it or not, because that's my routine day was about maybe 9 to 9 or 9 to 10, with work pretty much every weekend. And you got paid more, but the hours. It's probably the difference between working a Saturday and not working a Saturday.
Yeah. So the hour requirement in my group is it's reasonable. the actual, so the utilization is what they use in PwC, and so there are, well, what you can get tricked with a little bit is that there are other kind of requirements, and so what's good about it is that there are a lot of resources to use to learn, right? So every Friday morning at 8:30 we have this Section 987 class that's taught by the guy who drafted the 06 proposed regs and another couple really bright practitioners, and so but that's like a weekly thing, and then there's a Tuesday thing, and then there's in the national office we're viewed as a resource for the firm in general, and so a lot of what we do is we educate the field offices if there's a new issue that's coming out, or if there's just kind of an area that we need to we feel like there needs to be a little more emphasis placed on, then our responsibility is to take the time to kind of create these curriculum or these curricula, and so there's kind of this the hard utilization hours that are required, and then there's these other kind of obligations that are expected of you, and then on top of that there's this kind of if you are, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, but if you are intending to practice at a very high level, it takes a commitment, and so there's a lot of areas to learn. I mean, this is the LLM program is just the beginning. I mean, it gives you great access to. I mean, it gets you. It sets your floor at a very high level. I mean, you can go in and start at what a third year associate would start at. You're kind of the base knowledge, but there's a lot of room after a third year associate. I mean, there's a lot of learning to do still, and so and so there's so there's the probably the hard requirements are probably, I would say, more at a law firm, but you can spend as much time at an accounting firm.
So I think it also depends what type of tax you're doing and what firm you're at. I have a friend who works at Baker McKenzie. He graduated same year as me, and his hours are, I think, 2,000. And he does corporate tax, and he is basically always at work. I mean, he likes his job, but it's definitely a lot. And my firm is we're kind of more of a smaller firm. Like, we have 600 lawyers, but we don't have international offices. We're like nothing compared to Baker McKenzie. They're way huge. So, and I'm in the estate planning group, which has kind of a better quality of life. So our billable hours, our firm is 1,900, but our group basically never reaches that goal because when we're dealing with individual clients, kind of the way we bill is different than if you're billing for a corporation. So our clients are really fee sensitive, and what we do is kind of a lot of small projects instead of, like, I have like 20 to 30 projects at one time. And like my friend Kent, who works at Baker McKenzie, he'll have like 3 projects at one time, but he can come into the office and just bill all day long. So that's kind of different. And I work more like the 9 to 7 with occasional weekends. And I still get paid like the same as my friend Kent does. So I have a really good gig.
She's living the dream. She really is.
But I think there's some differences between firms. So.
And practice groups.
Yeah,
Okay,
practice groups.
I think we're just about to end it. We're available up here if you want to come and ask us questions individually, or at least Stafford and I will be, and Molly. But anyway, thank you once again for coming. If you have any questions at all, I can put you in touch with any of the panelists, and asking good questions is what you should be doing. And I hope to see all of you next year at Georgetown.